At our stage of evolution, we have the capability, the free will, to choose how we live and behave with nature and the other communities of living beings. Therefore, we have also the responsibility to take care of our environment, to contribute to the global evolution plan. We are currently degrading massively our environment. Our world is showing signs of an acute sickness. A doctor is needed to assess the root causes and to deliver some remedies. In fact, the prescription have been turned off. Is that censorship? I don't mind.
He thought you were going on for too long.
I'll be brief. Can I continue? I lost my train of thought. We are currently degrading massively our environment. Our world is showing signs of an acute sickness. A doctor is needed to assess the root causes and to deliver some remedies. In fact, the prescription has already been written down some thousands of years ago. It's named Theosophia, or the wisdom tradition. It just needs to be implemented. With you, Monsieur Jacques Manic.
Okay, dear sister and brother, first of all, thank you very much for allowing this opportunity to share thinking about this key subject. I would like also to thank Linda this morning for remembering us that the Kali Yuga is there. It will help understand a little bit the picture I will show you. And finally, you will have to bear with me for a little bit, because the vision of the world, as I can sense it, is a little bit grim, not the way we used to look at it or the way we want it to. But it's important, if we want to have a very good understanding, which means a good diagnostic, to look at it really in front of us. And before I start, there is also something I like to share. I think there is magic here in our family, and I'm talking about the Theosophical family, and not the magic which we talked this morning, which we don't want, but the real magic, because coming from any part of the world, what is interesting, I found out listening to this morning talks that we reach almost the same conclusion. So that's what I call magic. So let's start with the vision of our world. Our world appears more and more as a sick world. Fever is bursting everywhere, and strange manifestations are popping up, like climate change, widespread physical and mental disease, wars, and so on. Our world is in a need for efficient remedy before it requires life support. But how did we arrive to this situation? To start, let's have a look around us, including past history, at least the one which are recorded, to catch a glimpse of the state of our world. First of all, we have what we call natural disaster. Since the beginning of humanity on Earth, natural disasters have always been part of life, and they have not yet wiped us from the surface of the Earth. They brought tremendous trauma and losses, slowing down or accelerating evolution. They reshape landscapes, human and animal community. They are part of the history and the legend of the people all over the world. Today, scientific development on some of these natural events have enabled us to better forecast and prevent some of the consequences. But we still have natural disasters remaining out of forecast and out of control, like earthquake, wildfire, health epidemics, and space disasters like deep impact and solar flare. They belong to our global environment, and we live with them. Then we have a second type of disaster, which is human-made disaster. Not going into much of a detail, but remembering, first of all, that we have in front of us the extinction crisis, which is all species of animals. There is a natural rate of extinction. For the last 500 million years, it was something like 1 to 5 species per year. We are losing now species at a rate of 1,000 to 10,000 times the background rate. By mid-century, as many as 30 to 50% of all species could be extinct. And 99% of currently threatened species are at risk due to human activity. Then we have the environment disaster, on which some pictures are on the screen, like Minamata in Japan, Seveso in Italy, Bhopal in India, Exxon Valdez in Alaska, Deepwater. There is a never-ending list for the last, let's say, 40 years. And more probably important, the nuclear accident in Chernobyl and Fukushima. These are the major disasters recorded, but there are also many smaller scale environmental disasters occurring all over the globe, having deep and permanent impact on the environment. Rarefaction of even exhaustion of natural resources, starting with clean water, is on its way. These are undeniable facts, not legends, and most of us have heard about them, have been informed about them. There is now a growing awareness of the potential impact of this human-made catastrophe on the survival of the species, including the human one. The latest subject in focus is global warming and its consequence on the whole planet. Last December last year in Paris, we had a gathering of more than 170 country leaders on the subject to give a broad overview of the situation and its forecastable consequence if we keep blindly rushing to the wall, which means if we don't drastically change our way of living, all of us. The final agreement has very strong statements like irreversible, urgent, concert for humankind, urgent. So very clearly, there is a good understanding and shared understanding of the situation. Now it's up to the 170 plus countries to implement, to act, to go to action, to transform wishful thinking and wording in action. Because, again, not going into too much detail, but it's almost since the 70s that these meetings occur on global climate change, and nothing really happened in the world. And we will end up the picture with human crisis. There is a constant and recurring behavior in human history, whatever the place of the epoch. It is called war. For probably the last 10,000 years, men have always been at war with other men. I was just reading yesterday the creation story of the Maori people here, and it's incredible. Almost after the first page, which explains the creation the separation between mother and father, there is war between people for the land, for food, and so on. And in most of the tradition, we find out. This is probably the deadliest disease we have embedded in our genes. It sometimes destroys completely civilization, giving sometimes birth to new human society, but the addiction seems eternal. 40 million people died during the last World War, and we still have around 60 armed conflicts in the world today. This is not a new departure from past history, but we observe that there is a strong acceleration in the degradation of our natural and social environment. To go further, and before any remedy can be imagined and elaborated, we need a reliable diagnostic. We need to assess the root cause which are feeding human behavior and are maybe driving him on the brinks of a global catastrophe. So talking about root cause, we need to consider two facets of the behavior of men. Men as an individual and men as part of a human group, a human society, even if behavior relating to society is rooted in personal behavior. In human society, there are three driving factors which are shaping behavior, and we are very familiar with those ones. First one is tradition, religion, and philosophy. The second one is science. The third one is economics and politics, the framework of human society. Or we can also say the domination of the masses by a minority. Looking to a recent report, the Oxfam report, we understand that 1% of the richest men own 48% of the world wealth, and the 52 remaining % are in the hand of a few. The end of the math is that 80% of the world population is left with 5.5% of the wealth on Earth. In 2014, the richest men, and there are 80, own 1,900 billion US dollars. They have doubled their gain between 2009 and 2014. It may look like many details, but I feel it's important to realize really the extent of where we are now. These driving factors generate a complex picture, creating a complex landscape into which individuals with their own complexity are embedded into. So let's dig a little bit inside those three factors to see if we can find out something obvious. Tradition, religion, and philosophy have been for many ages the backbone of man in society, providing with models of creation and evolution of the universe and of the various living creatures, including man. Their associated ethics and morals usually provide with a rationalistic approach to enable and support life in community. For example, not to kill, not to steal, not to lie, etc. Loving kindness, humility, service to others was advocate for a peaceful life. Did it work? Not really, except for a very small minority of individuals. Today's world, like yesterday's world, is witnessing killing, stealing, domination, exploitation, even extermination in some cases. But somehow it provides those tradition, religion, and philosophy a frameworks which enable community to evolve throughout their own up and down cycles. Part of the current acceleration signal is the vanishing of the ethical value inherited from the tradition and the religion, at least in a highly developed country. Let's have a look at science very quickly. It was but a part of philosophy since ancient times, and recently, for the last 400 years, it divorced from it to get rid of everything which could impair its development. Physics and metaphysics, which were interrelated and which were giving a consistent view of reality, finally separate. Science, at last free from any bondage, started formatting our modern society with a new model of reality, technological development which have large impact on our way of life, and finally, with imposing a new paradigm based on the materialistic philosophy. And finally, economics and politics, we could call them the twin dark angels, so tied together and so unpredictable. Nothing seems to be able to stop this frenzy of always more for me. The richest men built and increased their fortune on finance, investment fund, insurance, and industrial business. For example, pharmaceutical and biotechnology industry seems very profitable, with a profit growth of 30 to 40% a year. And politics are the facilitator. For example, the finance and pharmaceutical industry are spending more than $1 billion in lobbying just in the US. It is just outraging compared to the World Food Program budget. It amounts up to 25% of its yearly budget for hunger relief. One of the recurrent characteristics of this type of situation is that they can be perpetuated without any control or regulation. This is because a new god was born. Starting in the Western country, it's called the global liberal economy, which only drivers are perpetual growth and always more profits, whatever the consequences are, including threats on the survival of human species. Natural and social environment are destroyed on the altar of profit. Every basic natural and vital element, like water, which the earth provides free of charge, is stolen by multinational company to be sold with the complicity of the government, depriving people from basic survival component. Looks a little bit grim, but these are some examples of the degree of craziness this new god has nurtured. But does it give us some clues about the root cause of what we're looking for? Not really. Tradition Religion, philosophy, science, economics, politics are just words representing mental concepts and models. By themselves, they cannot perform anything, but they have a common denominator. If we accept a revelation which pours into tradition and religion, everything which happens in our world are the result of action, themselves being the result of thoughts. And the actor of the action has a name, man, us. So let's see if we can find some fundamental characteristic in human constitution or evolution which could help us understand this behavior when he is acting in community. According to most traditional religion, reality is one, Sat, the absolute, the para-Brahman of the Vedantine. But because we cannot have a direct understanding of it in our state of evolution, we, human beings, conceptualize reality as multiple and fragmented. This is a direct consequence of our current capability limitation in the current development cycle. The wisdom religion, name it the absolute, the one reality, Sat, and from it the whole world manifestation emanates and develops throughout a journey which involves evolution cycle. The wisdom religion teaches us the current cycle of our humanity as focused on the development of the mental, intellectual layer of humanity. After 100 million of years spent on the development of physical and emotional layers, which constitute our core physical, etheric, and emotional base, the mental aspect is now the center of gravity for man. We can sense acceleration, a strong acceleration in its development for the last 3-4 centuries, leading to this takeover, this usurpation of the control of man by its mental intellectual capabilities, leading to the omnipresent materialism philosophy and its consequence on all other living kingdoms on earth. This fragmentation creates an unbalanced being, deeply rooted in nature due to its past evolution cycle, very influenced and driven by its natural tendency and desires, which give him and now equipped with a powerful engine, its mental capability, which give him the illusion that he can master nature for his own use and pleasure. There is nothing new in that description. Most of the tradition have identified those key characteristics of human behavior with different way of description. It is just an example extract from the Vedika Chudamani, where Sri Shankaracharya clearly explain, for example, that from the self accepting every changing mood of mind as himself, he wanders mean-minded, despicable-minded. And we are talking about at least almost 2,000 years ago. Let's dig a little bit further to see if we can again identify something central and common to all, which would help us to understand the situation. In most of the philosophy and religion of the world, a great deal of attention is centered around the ego, or personality, we call it in theosophy. Its way of operation and the means to overcome it is also described. It is, for most of us, like a crystallization of energy around which we, as a person, seems to orbit like a moon around its mother planet. It gives a sense of self-existing because all our perception, emotion, reasoning seems to feed it, and all our thoughts, words, and actions seems to emanate from it. Today we are talking about the consequence of our action in our community and the world at large. So we may want to focus on this mechanism, the personal ego, that probably plays a major role in our earthly drama. And again, the actor of this drama are ourselves, the men and women, whatever we name them. We are the result of past evolutions, and most of our actions are a reaction against whatever can harm our sense of the ego. Who I am. Most of us are self-centered and have built a fortress around our small personal world to protect ourselves from anything which could disturb this delicate balance. We agree to leave it, but only heavily harmed, to go around and grasp whatever will provide some more fleeting pleasure or more security for me, the sense of the ego. And when we come back in our fortress, we close the door to the outside world of suffering, because we think we can ignore it, but we cannot. The walls will continue to resonate more and more with the vibration of suffering until our heart will not be able to bear it anymore. Because the heart, the channel of the most powerful force in the universe, love, cannot be imprisoned forever by the walls of the personal ego. But it takes time and a learning curve, as in any evolutionary process. So now that we have the beginning of a diagnostic, we may want to think about path for progress. What can we do as individual? That's always the question which comes to our mind. A common reaction to this question is usually, it's just impossible for a single individual to change the world. Then we build a community of people, association, political or religious movement. We define goals and objectives. We develop policies and action. We may have some influence on the evolution as a group on our human world. I'm talking about, of course, not a theosophical group, but generic group. But sooner or later, the basic behavior of man takes over and changes the course of its action. Greediness and corruption enter the stage, struggle for power emerge, and the movement dies out or ends up as a totalitarianism. If we take the example of environmental challenge, we have mixed results. Some 50 years ago, NGO, non-government organization, start as whistleblower, and they were able to catch the attention of the public. Later on, and due to the pressure of the public, some of the country government decide to integrate ecology as one of their action field, generating a good public awareness of the potential threat induced by uncontrolled exploitation and pollution. And they deliver some good measure to limit the damage. Then, when these actions were started to be a threat for profit-making international groups, it was seized by politics and lobbyists and put under control. The end result as of today is not in line with the situation. Let's have a quick look on another example, which is organic food. It all started when the people realized that the agro-industrial lobbies were controlling most of the food and drug sources. And for the sake of more profit, were genetically modifying the nature of the product they sell, adding many unhealthy components, not to talk about poisonous substance. Then we had local groups starting to develop organic products, up to the point where the organic food consumption was visible as an economic downturn for the agro-industry. Then their reaction was to integrate the organic food in their production line. Now we can find organic food in every supermarket, but they are no more organic. These examples illustrate just the forces and weakness of group action. They may be the only available counterpower, at least to inform and develop awareness of what is really going on in our world. Locally, it provides with structured human organization capable of concrete action. Their scope remains limited to local domain and cannot cope with national or worldwide threats. As we need to remember that this type of action are but reaction to damage already done. It cannot address the root cause, which are fueling the infernal loop: greed, desire, lack of love and compassion. Always more for me. Let's now explore the individual capability. As already pointed out, most of the inner spiritual traditions of the world are focusing on two key domains: a theoretical, metaphysical one, which proposes a model of the universe, its cosmogenesis, its evolution, and the place and role of man in this scheme. Then, a practical one, which is made of the various paths practiced for men to reach the purpose of the plan. And we have, fortunately, a good set of manuals inherited from past human history, the history of the seekers, what we call the saints, in all religions, who bear testimony of their struggle on the path, their failure, their discovery, and their accomplishment in life. They all point to the same core teaching, which Theosophia is a synthesis. Man is one of the stages of the evolution of the divine cycle. He is neither the first nor the last one, and he has the capability to influence the rate of his development. The current development cycle is a turning point, the beginning of the ascending part, where the divine spark, after having gone through an almost complete obscuration of her divine origin, is now resurfacing from the depth of what we call matter. We can actively participate to this divine blooming by a full cooperation of all our layers, by reorienting our energies toward the light without losing contact with our current existence. One of the most important steps on the path, if not the most important one, is related to the personal ego, the personality. It is an essential step on the evolutionary path, but not a final one. Clinging to the high sense must be thoroughly sensed and understood as a hard limit to the evolution of the divine in man. Then it has to be overcome by turning and tuning all our thoughts, words, and action toward the divine spark which resides in our inner heart. It may seem very remote from our day-to-day life and preoccupations. We may think that it is not for us, that we do not have time and energy to do it. Then, if so, it means that we are not suffocating enough in our ivory tower, that we are not yet sensitive enough to the surrounding suffering. We will try again and again to find alternatives to minimize our lack of comfort and which do not upset the private property of the ego, until we realize that we are the prisoner of this illusionary sense of the I. This is probably the biggest challenge we are facing, but it is also the exit door toward a more balanced, harmonious, and fruitful life. Nobody can do it for us. It is a pure individual approach. Can it solve our problems? Probably not immediately. Otherwise, all of us would already be saints, and none of the current impending disaster would have been possible. This is another interesting question. Having access to most of the tradition teaching, especially today with the modern technology and practice in the world, why cannot we just simply implement them, put them in action, to stop suffering? We can hardly find an excuse for not doing it, even if we are capable to always find explanation to justify our behavior. Back to the allegory of the sickness. You may remember when we were kids and we had some small illness or sickness. The doctor came and gave some medicine, and most of the time we don't want to take those medicine because it is bitter. We don't like it. We know that they will cure the disease, but we don't like it. So it's somehow a little bit similar to what we are living. Because apart from some advanced being in evolution, we must obey the law of nature to which we belong. And one of its basic characteristics is inertia, called tamas. It means we must give time, small t, to time, capital T. But it also means, above all, that action is required, not to let tamas alone drive the evolution. Reading books and listening to talks is so comfortable for most of us. But all books and lectures in the world are dead letters as long as we go back to our basic behavior as soon as we stop reading or listening. Going to action requires an overcoming of this inertia. It requires a warrior attitude. Not to go to war, but to develop a strong and unshakable willingness to understand the whole process of man evolution on Earth, and from that, to act accordingly. Basic, concrete steps can be achieved individually once we start sensing and recognizing our profound inner nature. Simple actions based on respect and compassion can have an impact which magnitude can be exponentially multiplied if we just behave as a living example of compassion in action. This is our individual and collective responsibility. Thank you very much.